but also on the verge of could be going down the bad path.
Yeah. She got that.
She did. Or you got that performance.
You're doing the twist, just like this.
Both John and Nick really enjoyed working on the movie. In fact, in the opening scene where Nick was still shooting Connor, he got sent the dailies of the carousel sequence where John is crawling on the ground holding his dead son. And he immediately called Travolta and said, the gauntlet has been thrown, and I now realize what level of acting I have to come up with to be in lockstep with you. And they were the whole rest of the way.
I'm Sean Archer. There's a bomb at the LA Convention Center. I'm Sean Archer, and now!
I was so happy working with Margaret Cho, because when we did the casting, the Margaret Cho had to keep calling the casting manager, and she wanted to be in the movie. I was really surprised because I know she was very popular and very funny. And then the decision for using her, it was all because of my daughter, Kimberly. Kimberly was a big fan of Margaret Cho. She loved her, and she thought she was one of the funniest and one of the great actors, And she was really a big fan, and she kept telling me, "Dad, you should, work with her. And, she's a wonderful, wonderful lady, and she's very funny." I said, "Oh yeah, okay. I try to make my daughter happy." But really, I have so much admire Margaret. She looks so natural and a lovable person. But in the meantime, I really appreciate she can come in to do this such a little part. So I pay a lot more respect to her.
And she was very credible as an FBI agent, having.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for a comedian to play. An action.
And for a comedian can play, a very serious character. And she looks really serious on the set. Unfortunately, we didn't have much time to talk to each other because I really love her performance, on the TV.
Thank you. Next question.
This is a scene that we were summoned to John Travolta's trailer. Travolta brought us in to ask, in a very even-handed but concerned way, about whether or not we were making fun of him and his looks, talking about his ridiculous chin, which we thought was going to get a big laugh from the audience, and this, of course, some dialogue that's full of irony. We explained to him that even though John Travolta is one of the most famously handsome men ever to light the silver screen, he's still Castor Troy inside, and he doesn't like looking at anybody's mug. Castor Troy is a much bigger egomaniac than Sean Archer. And we explained it to John, and we have expected him to say, well, pull it out. But you know what? Travolta was just ever the gentleman as he was the whole scene, and he told us to keep it. You guys are right. Let's see how it plays.
He owned it, and he had a great fun in that scene. Again, these little scenes are what the real pleasure of the movie is. Face Off was actually written 2 years before we had ever even heard of John Woo. Mike and I had written the script. We had sold it to Warner Brothers. It languished there on a shelf, was not going to ever get made there. And
it was much more science fiction then.
And much more expensive. And anyway, while I was there, one day I went down to the New Beverly Theater, which is a revival house in Los Angeles, in Hollywood. And I forget what I went to see.
The Tenant.
The Tenant, right, says Mike. Anyway, there was a trailer for a movie called The Killer. And it was a great trailer because it was all this crazy action intercut with all these wonderful reviews from the Village Voice and whatnot. And it's a fantastic trailer. And I watched it in amazement because I felt it had to have been animated or something. It certainly seemed like a live-action movie, yet the way people were flying around, it couldn't possibly be real. And I actually went back the next night just to watch the trailer again. And when the movie actually came to the New Beverly a couple of weeks later, Mike and I went to see it, and we sat there with our jaws on the floor. And when it was over, we turned to each other and said, we wrote a John Woo movie. Because all the themes in The Killer are present in Face Off, and the doppelganger aspect of the whole thing, and the switching the places, and the friction between good and evil, and all, the sort of
the
balance between good and evil, the triangle with a kind of idealistic woman in the middle of it all. And by coincidence, John had subsequently come to Hollywood. We were able to get him the script, and of course we were very fortunate that he responded to it. When we first met John, the first thing he said was, your script is the best action script I've ever read. And I think he owned us. At that point, we had seen, of course, all his films that were released in The Better Tomorrow 1 and 2, and The Killer, and Bullet in the Head, and Hard Boiled, etc. So anyway, I think that that was the beginning of, and to our minds, a beautiful friendship, and a very gratifying, creative relationship. And he's been
with
wonderful.
both John and Terrence.
Yeah, they've been wonderfully supportive of us and great mentors.
Well, was the stick successfully...
Nick, more than John, brought a lot of improv to the set every day. And what was a lot of fun for us throughout, when they swapped characters, like, for example, when Nick grabbed the teenage girl's butt back in the Civic Center, we then tried to find a place later on in the shoot where John could do it as Castor Troy. So it was a lot of fun to sort of try to find places for all that, although it annoyed Nick Cage because he complained to us that no one would know. If John did it too, no one would know it was his idea.
This scene was a little more graphic, and quite a bit more graphic in the screenplay, right, Michael?
That's correct.
Before John turned it into a romance, and with the candles and all that.
Well, I try to make this scene more of a romantic, I just love candles. I love Stanley Kubrick's movies, Barry Lyndon. I love the movie so much, and the whole movie used a lot of candles, and he also used the candle lights for the major lighting. I always try to make a similar scene in my movies. So that's the moment, that's the chance that I can use a candle,
Tribute to this scene is my best friend growing up proposed to his wife after recreating this dinner for her with all the candles. After he saw the movie, he got the lobster, he got the spaghetti, he got all the candles, and she said yes. So there you go.
What's the matter?
This is the scene, this is the reason why, I don't know if you even know this, why Warner Brothers dropped the screenplay and put it in turnaround.
No, I didn't know
because they did not want her to sleep with him. They felt it was too much. And they kept telling us, well, can't she have a headache, or she just has to be at work all the time? And they were really afraid of this scene. And John realized it had to be in the movie, because unless the bad guy conquers the wife, however momentarily, you're not afraid he's going to win. You need that fear. So John turned it into this very romantic seduction. Of course, the character of Castor Troy knows from reading the diary that she has kind of a sexless marriage, a loveless marriage, and the bad guy takes advantage of that fact.
Working with Nick is wonderful, he's really into the character, and he didn't talk to anyone much. So whenever he came in the set, he was so quiet, and he always like to stay in a corner and try to concentrate and focus and try to build up his emotion. So people even didn't know how to talk to him. But I understood him. I know now he's being the character, So it's and he tried to be real, It's totally different from John Travolta.
Yes,
John is a very funny guy. He always please everyone, and he talked to anyone. Whenever he saw anyone unhappy, and he always go to comfort him, and then try to make them happy. Even though Nick didn't talk much, but the whole crew and the people all cared about him. They all love him.
Initially, he just walked up in the script, walked up and hit the guard and got sent to the clinic. But this became sort of more played out and more dramatic.
John turned it much more into a prison riot sequence.
Over this cigarette, which of course it made you realize that he had a plan. It wasn't just, I'm going to punch you in the face and get sent to the clinic. Archer already had a plan about how he was going to escape.
And in this case, he gets the support of all the other prisoners, too. John did a twist on the usual, oh, let me have a last cigarette before I die, and then, you know, he escapes. But this was done in a much more interesting way.
Well, in the whole prison, only the guards can smoke. So the cigarette became the symbol of authority.
And also, it was in defiance of Sherry Lansing. Remember, she sent that memo to us that said, I don't want to see any of the prisoners drinking or smoking.
Hold it. Can I have a light?
You know those things will kill you.
Get his boots, Walton.
Bob, I didn't touch your wife.
So I remember when we saw the scene, he was sitting in the electric chair. Support the scene that he was so angry and so emotional, And that day was his birthday, and I wanted to surprise him. And then when Nate come on the set, I told him, the scene, you sit on the chair, and then you start thinking, and then all of a sudden you think about, a lot of painful, thing, and then you're getting angry, just sit there, And then, okay, let's shoot it, I said, camera ready, everybody ready, so when he just building up his emotion, and when I just yelled, action, and all of a sudden the whole crew singing and bringing in the huge birthday cake to him. And he was so surprised. I said, because, Nick and I is a very serious person. And he had never smiled. I have never smiled. And all of a sudden, I didn't know, I could be, that naughty, So we bring the cake, up. And he cut the cake, and he felt the love from everybody. And he got it, and everybody really care about him. So, and then after the cake, he was, John, don't do that for me again. And then, don't do that anymore. And then he coming back into the emotion and give his best for the camera. I could never forget that moment,
Neil Spizak, our production designer, did such an amazing job on this. He came to us. He's like, how the hell are you going to get him out of this joint? We had a whole thing in the earlier script with thumbprints. And,
right, that's right.
And he had access panel grids. But, it boiled down to something, again, kind of cliched and simplified, which is we're going to overload the system and cause a bunch of sparks. It's hardly elegant, but of course, John Woo pulled it off. I mean, it's exciting, but it's not, we'd hardly consider this sequence brilliant from a writing standpoint.
Here, John, in some ways, redeems it, again, character.
You want to talk about how you decided to, because again, it was divergent from the screenplay, to have the convict of Dubov team up with Nick Cage for the escape?
I tried to make the Dubov, this character a little bigger, Mm-hmm. And then it's just like, ironically, Dubov was his only friend, even though he was the enemy.
And it's such a simple thing as having these two guys sort of hanging onto either end of a gun. Never seen it in a movie, simple little iconic image like that.
While the 4th of July is happening below.
Yeah, and that's their lifeline together, and of course it doesn't work. It was a fine line to walk because, of course, he has to be a key in his own escape and key in his own survival. He can't have just people rescuing him constantly.
These people don't know that he's anything other than Castor Troy.
Of course, it is a bit of a conundrum. He's the bad guy. Everyone thinks he's the bad guy. But there's a certain line he can't ever cross, and that is to take a life of law enforcement. So it was difficult to find that balance.
John, I think, found that balance by having these guards that are either, shot in the knee or in the foot.
Yeah.